Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is the lovely podcast, The Endurance of Labor Laws. I am your lovely host, Lesley Sullivan, and this is episode 23. And today we're going to take a look at the United Association. So just first off, when I was researching this and looking at this article, it doesn't list all the different presidents that have been operating this union, and it doesn't give me specific people that founded it. So off the bat, that kind of concerns me because typically you know who founded something, you know who your president is and things like that. But that's the first thing I noticed immediately. So let's go ahead and get started on this one. Let's go over just some basic facts just to start. It says it was founded October 11th, 1889, and it has locations in the United States, Canada, Ireland, and Australia. So we've got 3 other countries that are involved in this union. And they have 360,000 members, and they are affiliated with the AFL-CIO and the CLC. So it says here, the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing, Pipe Fitting, and Sprinkler Fitting Industry of the United States and Canada is a labor union which represents workers in the plumbing and pipe fitting industries in the United States and Canada. Part of their history, it says, journeymen in the pipe trades in the 1880s worked in 3 basic crafts: plumbers, steam fitters, and gas fitters. The first truly successful national body, the United Association of Journeymen Plumbers, Gas Fitters, Steam Fitters, and Steam Fitters Helpers of the United States and Canada, was officially founded on October 11, 1889. Gradually, former members of the rival unions joined the United Association. The Depression of 1893 to 1897 slowed the development of a stronger organization. And I didn't know there was a depression during that time, so I'm probably going to look that up. It says membership in the United Association grew to 6,700 in 1893, but fell to 4,400 by 1897. Yet by that year, 151 local unions were listed on its rolls. So they're growing in terms of locations popping up everywhere, but not necessarily membership. It says starting in 1898, the construction industry entered a period of expansion and prosperity that lasted until 1914. From 1898 to 1906, the United Association quadrupled its membership. During its first years, the United Association was essentially a federation of local unions, rather than a truly national union of the pipe trades. And we're seeing that in regards to how they expanded to include other types of crafts. It says the major breakthrough toward a unified national organization came at the 1902 National Convention in Omaha, when delegates approved a nationalization committee proposal establishing a comprehensive system of sick, death, and strike benefits. I am a little concerned about that because it's approving a nationalization committee. That right there tells me communism as well as socialism. That concerns me a little bit right there. Because usually when you want a really good local union, you don't necessarily want to be nationalized because you don't want your funds to go elsewhere. You want them to stay within your community so that way they help you and your families and your neighbors. So it goes on to say, as such reforms to strengthen the national organization were being made in the early part of the century, however, some locals broke ranks to form a rival union. I'm not surprised, because that's one thing that happens when you nationalize something. You kind of lose your individuality, and that is very unfortunate. In August 1906, the members of the, I don't know how to pronounce this, secessionist union realized the futility of further rivalry and agreed to affiliate with the United Association. From 1898 to 1914, the United Association went through several phases of a struggle with the International Association of Steam and Hot Water Fitters and Helpers, a prolonged and sometimes bitter dispute both over jurisdiction over a craft, steam fitting, and work assignments, plumbers versus steam fitters. The conflict affected other building trades when walkouts by the rival steam fitting organizations as a result of their jurisdictional dispute led to work stoppages by other trades or other crafts. That's one thing that I get very concerned with unions and rival unions, is that it can halt labor across the board when things actually need to get done. So whatever's going on within these unions can have a direct impact on society and make it very difficult for regular everyday people like you and me to have a normal functioning lifestyle when it comes to basic utilities that we need in our homes and at our places of business. It goes on to say the strength of the United Association and favorable rulings by the American Federation of Labor, including the revocation of the International Association's charter in 1912, ended this jurisdictional battle, but other jurisdictional issues would continue to challenge the union. I'm not surprised, because they sound very much socialist just by what I'm seeing here so far. New disputes arose over the construction of chemical plants and other manufacturing and service establishments that required extensive piping systems. Large volumes of newer types of pipe fitting installation and the shift from World War I wartime industries to peacetime construction caused considerable difficulties. Jurisdictional problems also developed with other national unions. I'm not surprised. But the United Association retained jurisdiction over important growing areas of work like construction of industrial plants, public utilities, petroleum facilities, and residential buildings. Now, what you want to notice here is that those things that were just listed are very large industries, and it affects large groups of people. So it's important to realize that sometimes these unions have way too much control over things that happen in our everyday lives, like services that we have to use. So, for example, if there's a power plant that supplies power for your city or your town, a union could basically make or break the power that goes to your house. Like if they go on strike or pull something like that. So unions do have their place, but they need to be restricted in their power, because sometimes that power interferes with customers and citizens and even people that are here illegally. You know, if they are renting an apartment, they need power to their apartment to have electricity. So if they don't have access to those things, that is very much the non-American way of doing life. So that concerns me there with that. It goes on to say, in the first half of the century, the United Association moved to formalize apprenticeship training programs. Now that I agree with, because that's training and that's learning and that's education. So that's really good. Including making a 5-year apprenticeship mandatory in 1921. I agree with that because technology changed very quickly in this turn of the century. And in 1938, holding that all apprentices be members of the United Association and attend related training classes. Its National Plumbing Apprenticeship Plan of 1936 was the first set of standards governing apprenticeship to win approval of the federal government. In the Depression, United Association membership fell from its 1929 peak of 60,000 to 26,000 by 1933. After several constitutional changes through the years, the 1946 convention changed the name of the organization to its present name, the United Association of Journeymen and Apprentices of the Plumbing and Pipe Fitting Industry of the United States and Canada. One thing I want to mention here is that I don't like it, as usual, when unions include other countries within our unions in the United States, because again, our labor laws are not the same, our industries are not completely the same, they're not identical. So you need to be careful who you align yourself with, because that affects your labor, that affects your contracts, and it also affects your economy, and it's not always for the best intentions. So that greatly concerns me with that. Goes on to say, throughout World War II and after, the United Association made considerable gains in membership and prestige. Between 1940 and 1954, membership surged from 60,000 to 240,000, with veterans entering the skilled craftsman field. United Association member George Meany was elected in 1952 to be president of the newly formed AFL-CIO and was to provide a shaping force in the American labor movement until his death in 1980. The New Frontier of President John F. Kennedy and Great Society of President Lyndon Johnson were movements supported by the United Association. With expanded training programs beginning in 1956, the UA was able to meet the demands of accelerated construction activity in the 1960s. With the increased work, the slogan, "There is no substitute for UA's skilled craftsmen," becoming widespread throughout the industry. By 1971, the UA they had 320,000 members. So then it says, according to UA's reports to the Department of Labor since 2000, the union has consistently had about 93% members in building trades, the remaining 7% in metal trades. Out of the total membership, most are considered journeymen, with about 12% considered apprentices. As of January 1st, 2017, 4th and 5th year apprentices are eligible to vote in the union. I don't know why they would not be allowed to vote prior to that, because when you're in a union, you're in the union. So I think that's kind of odd. Another thing that got my attention was with the metal trades, that there's only 7% of their members that are in the metal trades. I think what people have forgotten is that China bought a lot of steel. I think this is within the last decade and a half. So the price of steel has gone up tremendously because of China. So what China did, again manipulating our market and again manipulating our economy, they buy up all these resources really cheap and then they up the price by astronomical rates. So that's probably why there are not as many people in the metal trades as in the other trades that are listed here. So it's important to realize that our economy can be very much infiltrated and affected by outside countries. Even people that are not involved directly in our unions, they can directly impact our unions based on the products that they buy and the markets that they try and put a stronghold on. And that's what the Chinese did here. And then it gives a little segment of their constitution. It says, the objects of this association are to protect its members from unjust and injurious competition and secure through unity of action among all workers of the industry throughout the United States and Canada, claiming as we do that labor is capital and is the only capital that possesses power to reproduce itself, as in other words, to create capital. Labor is the interest underlying all other interests. Therefore, it is entitled to and should receive from society and government protection and encouragement. If that's not a socialistic way of looking at something, I don't know what is. See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to combine socialism with capitalism. You can't do that. Socialism is the direct opposite of capitalism. So what this union basically, what it's telling me, is they want to have their cake and eat it too. You can't be a socialist and be a capitalist. You're either one or the other. You know, it's kind of like how you can't be a Democrat and a Republican. The way around that is you can be a moderate Democrat or a moderate Republican, but you can't serve or believe in both parties that way. It's the same way here. Socialism takes from people that has a lot of money. Capitalism enables people, anybody and everybody, to make more money, make as much as they want. So to me, this union is very much socialist, and I think it's really sad that their socialist ties goes back all the way to 1889. That is very disturbing, but it also doesn't surprise me now that they have locations in Canada, Ireland, and Australia. Canada has problems with socialism. Ireland has a lot of problems with socialism. Australia, I'm not completely aware that they have a problem with it per se, but I think it is kind of suspicious that they are aligning themselves with a union that was founded in a very socialist manner. And I think that's one reason why we don't have a definitive list of all their presidents that have served in this union. I think that's also why it's not listed if they make donations to the Democratic Party or to any political party. I think that's very suspicious. I think that's very odd, because normally that information is readily available, but when it is not readily available, that tells me they don't want people to know. They don't want people to know their real intention, and I think it's because they want all the power, they want all the contracts, and I mean, even from the very beginning, there are jurisdictional battles going on within this union, and they're not being very nice to other unions. And the way that they get around that is they encourage other unions to come into union with them and be under their umbrella. So I think it's very suspicious when a union doesn't want other unions to practice their individuality and to focus on their particular trade. Because I think when you align yourself with someone that is way larger than you in terms of organizations, you lose your individuality. And then it's almost like you have to adopt their constitution, not them adopting yours. It's almost like a company merger or takeover. You know, I think I've mentioned previously in a podcast in this series that, you know, I worked for an employer and all job hirings immediately ceased when we found out we were quote unquote merging with another company in another state, but it was really just a takeover. This company in the other state was taking over our locations here in Oklahoma, And we were the ones that experienced firings. They did not. And so it completely changed the hierarchy within our company. It created a lot of hostility, but just kind of nonverbal and non-physical. There was an undercurrent of hostility because our location did not appreciate being viewed as the problem child when our location was the one that did all the grunt work in terms of what this company did for a living. It was just kind of like yet another company just wanted to buy us up, take our assets, take our profits, and then discredit and discount our jobs so that we lose our healthcare benefits. But that is what happens in a true economy. That's what happens in the free market. That's what happens in capitalism. When you have socialism, it means that companies cannot make changes in the industry. They can't make things better. Did we like what happened? No. However, we knew that as workers, we could move on to better things. Like we didn't throw hissy fits and get, super pissed off about stuff, excuse my language, but it's one of those things that eventually you have to deal with reality. And it seems like with unions like this, they just want to have their cake and eat it too, and they don't really want equality. They want favoritism. They want favoritism within the job market. They want favoritism within the economy. They want favoritism just within the labor force in general, but it should be geared towards them being the favorite, not other people. Not other unions, not other workers, not other industries. That is a problem. Because if you have favoritism, it leads to monopolies, even within unions like this. Like monopolies are supposed to be illegal in the United States. So if it's wrong for a business, a company to practice a monopoly type structure, then it should be illegal for unions to operate that way. But unfortunately, it is not illegal. They worm around it and they find ways of getting affiliated with who they need to be affiliated with so they can practice that type of monopoly so that way they can take over these other locals and then take over jurisdictions that they have no business being in. See, if I was in one of these jurisdictions that got taken over by this union, I would not be happy with this because I would know that if they're just wanting to take over, then they don't have good intentions towards my craft, my trade, my work, my hours, and my pay. They just want the numbers and they want the membership fees, they want the membership dues. And that to me, it gets my attention very quickly with things like that because to lose your individuality in your work or just even in your everyday life is such a crime. It is such a disadvantage because we were all born uniquely and individually. Like when we're born, we're not born as a community. We're not born as a society. And what I mean by that is that when you were born, you're born as an individual, even if you have a twin with you. You are an individual. You have your own DNA. You have your own fingerprints, your own footprints. You have your own mind. You have your own personality. And so when you're born as an individual, when you are in a society that's more socialist, you lose your individuality because you have a government or an industry that wants to strip you of your individuality so that way they can control and manipulate your pay, your citizenship, your companies, and just where you live because that's how they operate. When you have capitalism and when you have democracy, true democracy, your individuality is guarded and protected because we know that within the free market and within capitalism and within democracy, you being born as an individual, which we all are, means that you are unique. You are not replicated, you're not duplicated, and you have value in this society. Society did not create you, but you are part of society, and the way that you are a part of society is you bring your individuality and your uniqueness into the company, into society. So that way you don't lose yourself, society gains another good person. Because the way a good functioning society operates is inclusiveness. And in socialism and communism and also fascism, they can claim to be inclusive, but it's really not, because they just want to assimilate. Assimilation it is the direct opposite of valuing human life for what it is, which is unique and beautiful. We are all unique and beautiful, whether you're male or female, it doesn't matter. Do not ever sacrifice your individuality for a government, for a job, for a union, for anything. Because once you make that sacrifice, it is very difficult to get your rights back. It's very difficult to find who you are meant to be and fulfill your calling within your lifetime. Because you were born who you are for a reason. You have God-given gifts and talents that nobody else has. So don't throw those away just to be a part of a collective. And I think that's what happened here within this union is they just want to grow and grow and grow and be a collective, but then their members lose their individuality, and you can see that when they're having fights over jurisdictions, over labor. Because if all labor is equal, as they claim in their little manifesto/constitution, if all labor is equal, why are they trying to squish other people's rights? Why are they trying to steal contracts? Why are they trying to devalue other people's labor? And see, all we know from here is how they devalued union labor. We're not even talking about non-union members. We're not even talking about people that are not even in this industry and they're not in unions. But I guarantee you this kind of union has their hand in multiple pies. And that's unfortunate because that's a form of manipulation of our market and of our economy. So I have some issues with that. Like that's not appropriate behavior at all. Because again, I look at it from an auditor point of view and from a staff accountant point of view. And to me, this union is riddled with a lot of problems from the very beginning because their constitution/manifesto reads very much socialist. And that's very discouraging. Because I think if you're going to have a union, which mind you, I'm not the biggest fan of unions right now in my life, but even so, unions do have a place. They just need to function properly. And they need to value all labor, regardless of whether you are in a union or not. You know, like, for example, my work is not plumbing. But I don't want this union to try and dictate to me in my industry what I should and should not do. And the way that they can dictate that is they can manipulate the job market. They can manipulate the economy. So even though I'm not in a union, I'm not a pipe fitter, I'm not a plumber. I'd actually love to be a plumber because I can't tell you how many times I've had to fix stuff in my house all on my own. But it's one of those things that even though I'm not in this particular occupation, it can still affect my job. It can still affect the industry I'm in. It can still affect my state. Because if they are manipulating labor, if they are manipulating contracts, they technically are manipulating the economy. And that is not good for anyone. That is a very dangerous way of running an organization, of running a union, of running a company. And technically, this is not a company by any means. If it was, I think federally, they would have been brought to their knees. But because they're a union, and they're chartered as a union, they get away with quite a bit. And I think that if I was in this union, I would call them out on it. And if I was not in their union, but I was in a different union, I would still call them out and be like, hey, your intentions are not the best. So you need to correct that. Otherwise, we're not going to do business with you. And we're going to let people know what you're up to. Like, because you have to stand up for what's right, even when it sucks. Because that's the whole point of standing up for what's right. Like, the most important moments in our lifetime for standing up for what's right is when it's really difficult, because that's when it really matters. It's easy to stand up for what's right when everything's going your way. You have a great job, great family, you've got everything you need, you know, you're loved and appreciated in your church, your community, your state, your country. It's when none of those things are going good, when it's really important to stand up for what's right. Because that's when you see who the tough people are. That's when you see people that have morals and values and they have ethics. What concerns me about this union is the lack of ethics, big time. Like, I think this would be an auditor's dream to audit them, to be blunt. I really do. But anyway, that is it for this lovely podcast. And I wanted to give a shout out to some people here because there are some really interesting countries and locations that are listening in. And I just want to thank you for your support. So I want to give a shout out to Texas, Oklahoma, British Columbia, New York. So those are in the United States, and then we had Canada. So let me go back to my other report here I have, because I can see locations. It gives me that because it kind of gives me a heads up of where I'm being listened to, and it shows me the platforms, which is really good. So I'm going to go ahead and list some other regions here. Let's see: Texas, Oklahoma, Virginia, New York, Ohio, District of Columbia, British Columbia, California. I love you, California. I love your lemons and your oranges. It's wonderful. And then the state of Washington. And we've got some more countries listening in. This is awesome. So we have the United States, of course. We have the United Kingdom. I love you, British. You people are so awesome. I love you very much. So we've mentioned Canada. We have the Netherlands. We have Slovakia. Love you very much. You're wonderful. We have South Africa. We have Japan and Denmark. Awesome. Love you very much. Thank you so much for listening in. So if you guys want to drop me a line, that's wonderful. You can reach me either directly from the podcast. There should be a message link, or you can email me at yourlaborlaws@gmail.com. And again, that's yourlaborlaws@gmail.com. So until next time, I pray that you are happy, healthy, and whole, that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.